Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hairymuppet. Welcome back to some Factorio Space Age tutorials. Today, we are finally getting on to fusion power. And we're also delaying quality. But I think I will definitely do the quality video before I do Prometheum Science. But I really just want to do fusion power because I think it's going to be nice and simple. And we'll be able to get it through it very quickly. So, first things first. Oh, excuse me. To get fusion power, you need to have a decent base on Aquilo because you need a buttload of quantum processors, and quantum processors are very hard to make. So you need blue circuits from wherever, tungsten carbide from Volcanus, superconductors from Fulgora, carbon fiber from Gleba, and lithium plate from Aquila, and fluoroketone also from Aquila. And it outputs a little bit of the hot fluoroketone, which you just pipe back into the system, and a quantum processor. So first things first, build it in an EM plant, so you get the prod bonus, chuck a whole bunch of productivity modules. I'm getting 175% productivity because I've got legendary prod modules in there. If you don't have legendaries, just put normal ones in there. But yeah, it is freaking awesome. Unfortunately, there is no productivity research for quantum processors, so you just have to deal with whatever you can get out of them. But yes, once you made quantum processors, you can make two components, two buildings. One is the fusion reactor, which takes, 250 quantum processor and a bunch of superconductors and tungsten plate, and you can make the fusion generator, which is 50 quantum processors, but still 100 of each of the other two. So you'll need a bunch of these. Usually you need one of these for every two of these, but when you start factoring in the neighbor bonus, you start to need a lot more of these guys because of the way it works. So that's how you make the actual buildings, and these are the only two buildings. Well, you'll need a cryo plant as well to cool down the fluoroketone, so make a bunch of these as well. Now you've already made fluoroketone, so all you need to do is barrel that up if you want to do fusion power on other planets, and then you can send the barrels into space using a rocket. And last thing you need is the fusion power cell. 40 gigawatts per fusion power cell. It is incredibly awesome. All you need is holmium plate, which you will have to ship in, lithium plate, which you make locally, and ammonia, which you make locally. Now, you're already shipping in holmium plate for the science, so you can just reuse that holmium plate here. But get a ton of these. I've actually only got a single machine making it, but it's got 4 speed modules on it, and it makes 1.6 per second, which is enough to power the entire solar system. A 5K SPM Megabase, the entire solar system is powered off this one machine. But I've easily got the resources to make another 6 of these machines, but there's no point because we just don't need them. So, you've got the 4 things you need. You got the fluoroketone, which you can either transfer it around hot or cold. I transfer it around hot, and then I cool it up at the source because you need to cool it up at the source anyway because of how the fusion power works. And then we've got our fusion power cells, and then we've got the 2 different buildings. So let's have a look at a very simple fusion power example. So here, this guy requires cold fluoroketone to work, and it consumes 4 cold fluoroketone per second, and it generates 4 plasma per second. These guys take in 2 plasma per second, and they output 2 hot fluoroketone per second. So there is no loss in fluoroketone. You just keep it all. And all you need at here is you need a process that will generate enough fluoroketone. It just turns the hot back into cold. Here it's making 10 per second, which is too much. We could probably get rid of some speed modules off it, but whatever. It is all good. Now, just a heads up here, that consumption of 4 per second is when it is actually producing 100 megawatts. Now, the awesome thing about fusion reactors is they're like steam engines from the original steam power. They will only consume fuel when it's needed. So here we're using 1.5 gigawatts out of a total of 6 gigawatts. So this is going to be doing 25%. So as you can see, it's only consuming 1 fluoroketone per second out of a total of 4. And as you can see, it's draining this quite slowly. It'll always drain it slowly, but I'm not going to go too much into the math, but one of these produces 40 gigajoules. 40 is 40 gigajoules. So yes, we're using up 1.5 gigawatts. So 40 divided by 1.5 is blah. And that's the rate at which we're going to be taking these guys in. Let me actually do the math. 40 divided by 1.5, 26. So we're going to be using one of these fusion things every 26 seconds for the entire base. Now I've got, how many of these do I have? I've got 60. So if we multiply that number by 60, this is going to take 1600 seconds to use a single fusion power cell. This individual reactor. Which is pretty awesome. So, if we look at how this works, basically it's got some input-output things for the cold fluoroketone, some input-output things for plasma, and you just have to connect it. It's kind of like a puzzle. You can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 hookups for the plasma, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the fluoroketone, and then this guy has, it takes in, it's got an input-output at the back side, and then it's got pure outputs for the plasma on these sides, and then pure outputs for the hot fluoroketone here. It's a very weird looking structure, and once you start dealing with neighbor bonuses, you will start to have you're going to need to build some very, very creative builds here. But as you can see, for this system, I basically just dumped in 10 barrels of the hot fluoroketone, and then I haven't need to dump in any more. So it looks like it's dry, but this guy actually has almost 1,000 cold fluoroketone backed up. And whenever it starts dumping some out again, it just goes straight in here, gets cooled straight away again, and gets pushed back in. So you do not need a lot of fluoroketone to keep this system running. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you need to know. You just keep dumping in the fusion power cells directly into the reactor, and this thing will give you 100 megawatts, and it doesn't use fusion power cells if it doesn't need to. So this is literally the best power source in the entire game now, because you can do it in a fairly small sort of area. And let's go over to our DSM, because this is actually quite impressive. So this has 2.4 gigawatts, sorry, worth of power on it. And it's using a very cool sort of power setup. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fly over to a planet. And we're on Aquilo. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly over to the nearest planet, which we could go to Gleba or Fulgora. I'm going to go to Fulgora. Do I want to? Yeah, let's go to Fulgora. And we can actually start it moving, and as soon as we arrive in it, it'll automatically kick off, which is awesome. Now, you can do signal related stuff to have it automatically kick off, but like when you've arrived, but I don't really worry about that too much. But the problem is it takes a little while to get to Fulgora, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to Fulgora from the map view and have a look at this, because this is the same layout. You know, if we're on the map view, we might as well go all the way to Nalvis, because this is the big one. This is the big one, You know what? I'm going to go to Nowvis. I'm going to go all the way to Nowvis. I'm going to drop to Nowvis. We're going to have a look at the Nowvis one. We're going to look at it from orbit first. And actually, no, actually what we're going to do is we're going to look at the logistics. So on Aquilo, I've got some rocket fuel and some blue circuits and low density structures to do all these rockets. I'm using direct insertion of these guys to basically just fill up the rocket. You can only fit 50 in a rocket at a time, so it is painful to send this fuel around. But then again, 50 rocket fuel is 2 terajoules of power, which is insane. So this stuff really does last a long time. Having said that, I do have rockets, 2 rockets for it, and I've got a system over here barreling up the hot fluoroketone and chucking it into another rocket over here. And I'm making the barrels using steel, which I pull out of this guy, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. We also got some barrels being chucked back down from the Angel ships, although they haven't been chucking down them for a while because it's obviously a closed system, and once you've got a certain amount of fluoroketone in the system, you don't need any more, so it stops chucking barrels down. Oh, by the way, this is 100 megawatts of fusion power up here. And since it's above Aquilo, we just send up the fusion, fuel cells whenever they need it for here. And in return, this one drops down blue circuits, which we need a ton of on Aquilo. How's my ship doing? It's almost at Fulgora. So basically, if we go over to Nowvis, we have a fusion fuel ship. It takes 1,000 fusion power cells and 1,000 barrels of fluoroketone hot. And it goes back to Nowvis. Now, the reason I have so much is because we actually use Nowvis as a staging area to send fusion power cells to other ships. And like the space science platform uses fusion power, so that needs some fusion power cells sent up to it. So we got to bounce them over to Nowvis and then send them up from Nowvis. So Nowvis is kind of a requester and a provider of fusion power cells. And if you remember back to our logistics, we can see that the space platform for Space Science 1 is importing from Nowvis. So you have to manually select that planet when you do that. So we've got this special group, Fusion Fuel Space Science, which gets them specifically from here. And if you look at my DSMs, they're also using Fusion Fuel Space Science because I want them to get the fusion fuel from Nowvis. Now they do stop over at Aquilo to pick up the quantum processors, so I could have got it there instead, but I chose just to sort of do it from Nowvis because it spends a lot more time at Nowvis because that's where it picks up all the biter eggs. So it might as well. Whereas, yeah. So, where are we at the moment? Oh, we just arrived at Nowvis. So that's pretty good. So basically, I'll show you this setup on Nowvis, but it's kind of the same for all of my other planets. I just direct insert it out here and send it off to a couple of trains. We've got a fluid train, and we've got a train that takes is a train full of fusion power cells. It's pretty awesome. And then I just send them down over to here, and boom. Now this one will just be sitting there forever because, of course, as we said, fusion power is lossless as far as fluoroketone. So this was basically just to sort of set it up in the first place. But I did automate it because I thought, why the hell not? And then this drops off the fusion power, but it only requests it when it needs more, and it doesn't need more at the moment. We got a little bit of a cache here because we want, well, I mean, we're not really going to run out of fusion power cells, but I created a cache here because I was being paranoid. And then we have 18 of these rows, and each row, each column has 4 of these fusion generators, 4 of these fusion things, and 24 of the generators. Reactors and generators. And this is where the neighbor bonus sort of comes in. So you have to make sure you orient them correctly. And because these two, the top and the bottom, are not going to be sharing the fluoroketone, you have to pipe it down. Now, I also had these pipes. These pipes are really unnecessary, but these ones definitely necessary. I got a little bit of logic up there that basically says only pump in the hot when there's less than 1,000. Based on this. And yeah, then this is just a closed loop that just cools it up. So this one does 16 per second. Each of these guys consumes 4 per second. So yeah, that's pretty much. And as you can see, we've had to get very creative here with our fusion generator. So you pump it out here, and then you send it off to the side, and then I send it up in this cool little spider leg sort of thing. And the reason you have to do it offset is because you need to get the hot fluoroketone out of each of these generators. So you get them a little bit offset, and you can sort of do it out there. Now, I'm sure that somebody has made a better and more constrained way of doing this. I love this way because it looks like some kind of weird spider. It looks so awesome. And especially I love it on my DSM because you zoom out and you got two of these things right in the middle, and it just looks so cool. It looks so incredibly cool. But that is that. And you'll notice the neighbor bonus is kind of a bit weird. Like, technically these guys should be having plus 200% on the neighbor bonus. However, the neighbor bonus does get into weird situations when you're not using all the plasma, because these guys kind of back up a little bit. They're not burning as much fusion power cells as they would be at full drain, and the neighbor bonus starts to go down a little bit weirdly. But you still get a neighbor bonus, and as you can see here, that it still outputs the same amount of plasma, but the plasma is a much higher temperature than it normally would be. So if we go over to Aquilo, you can see the plasma is at 1 million degrees. Here it is at 2.27 million degrees or something like that. And these guys, they will consume less plasma if the plasma is at a higher temperature, but they will still produce the same amount of megawatts. So normally, if you're putting out a certain amount of plasma, it's 1 million degrees. This one will just consume pretty much half of it, well, at the normal rate. But if it's at a higher temperature, it'll consume less of it, but still produce the same amount of power. So that's how the neighbor bonus works. And yeah, basically it just keeps sending the plasma down here. Now, we're not using full power at the moment. We're only using 11 gigawatts out of our total of 23 gigawatts. But as you can see, yeah, it'll continue sending it down all the way down. And then we just need pipes to basically route ketone. Don't know what that's doing. You do not need to be there. Oh, of course I don't have anything in my inventory, so I can't rebuild any of this. Let's just put this back. Why not? But yeah, that's pretty much it for fusion power. It seems crazy. The fact is, you can produce so many fusion power cells very easily. The main issue is just the logistics. But once you figure out that you can barrel the fluoroketone and just send it around everywhere, then you're fine. In terms of Aquilo, I'd say I actually had more problems getting enough fluoroketone to send out than I did fusion power cells. Having said that, once you fill up all your systems with fluoroketone, you don't need to continue providing it. It just becomes a closed system, and so then all you need to do is send out the fusion power cells. And I'd highly recommend having a separate ship. Highly recommend having a separate ship for the fusion power for every single planet that you're using it on. I've got an NV one, I've got a VC one, I've got a Gleba fusion fuel, and I've got a Fulgura fusion fuel. And I'm using fusion fuel on every single planet. I'm using 23 gigawatts on now Vs, but on all the other planets I'm just using 6. So if we go to Volcanus, there's our 6 gigawatts over there, and we're just belting the stuff in. On Gleba, we've got 6 gigawatts of fusion fuel, of fusion power over here. And on Fulgura, we have over here. Now, it's a little bit of a pain getting the fusion power cells over here, but yeah, it's not too much of a pain. Once you got foundation, it's not too hard to move stuff around Fulgura via belts. I could have done it with trains, but belts were just simpler. And yeah, one thing I'd recommend is a little thing like this. So you only fill up half of the belt, because at the start, if you're running a little bit low on fusion power cells, you don't want to have too many of them just sort of on the belts when they don't need to be. But yeah, once you got just thousands of them lying around, then it's not too much of an issue. So that's pretty much it. This little spider right here takes 4 of the reactors, 24 of the generators, and it produces 1.2 gigawatts by itself. So I've got 18 of these. I was planning on doing 20, but I ran into some biters and I couldn't be bothered destroying them. So we just created 18, and it's only half the amount of power that we need for this entire base. So it's really not an issue. And that's it. I still got nuclear. Maybe I should get rid of the nuclear because it might be affecting my UPS slightly. I know that they fixed up fluids, so the UPS drain from nuclear from fluids is probably gone, but the thing is it still calculates the temperature individually for each heat pipe, which is going to be a bit of a UPS drain. So having said that, I didn't really see detailed info. Entity time usage. It doesn't really show heat pipes here. Maybe if I go to time usage. It includes all of them in one thing. Heat network, 0.7. That's not too bad. I'm guessing most of that comes from Aquilo anyway, because Aquilo has heat pipes out the wazoo, so nuclear is probably not impacting it too much. Okay. If I had a massive power, if I was producing 24 gigawatts via nuclear power, then I'm sure the heat pipes would be much more of a concern. But having said that, you have to use them on Aquilo anyway. So even though we use fusion power and avoid the heat pipes, we still got to use a bunch of them on Aquilo. So we're kind of screwed. Anyway. But that's pretty much it. That is fusion power. That is how you do it. There's a little bit of a logistics overhead if you want to use it on other planets or on ships. But once you have it, I mean, it is the ultimate power source. There's nothing that even comes close. Solar technically is more UPS efficient, but you would need this many solar panels probably to do 24 gigawatts, maybe even more. I mean, solar panels are just ridiculous. So all you really need to continually produce is the fusion power cells. And once you've got a decent Aquilo base set up, that's all you need. Bit of holmium, bit of lithium, bit of ammonium. It's so easy to make. It's so incredibly easy to make. So yeah, but you really need a decent base and a decent amount of logistics. But once you do that, your power situation is solved forever. It's just solved forever. And yeah, if you're going out to the edge of the solar system and you're not doing a speed run, then I would say that, yeah, fusion power on that final ship that makes it out to the edge of the solar system is almost a no-brainer. You could still do it with nuclear, but yeah, if we have a look, space map, 1% solar power, there's no way you can do it with solar, but fusion, no-brainer, and you could do it with nuclear, but I mean, if you're not doing a speed run, then I would just go for fusion. So anyway, that's fusion power. This has been a nice short video. So all we've got left on our tutorial series is quality and Shattered Planet. And I feel like my voice is really going, so I think I might wait for quality and Shattered Planet maybe a couple of days, because I've been drumming these out like crazy. But anyway, that has been Fusion Power. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Let's go over and have a bit more of a look at that awesome Fusion Power setup. And yeah, I think a 2x2, you could do more than a 2x2. I think you could do it like a 2x3, maybe even a 3x3, but the amount of crazy chaos you would need with this sort of stuff to get the pipes going would be insane. I'm sure somebody's done it though. So I'm sure you couldn't do well, here's the thing, you can't do a 3x3 because then you can't insert the things into them anymore. So you'd have to do a 2x3. I think a 2x3, you could do a 2x4 or a 2x5 or a 2x6 or something like that, but you can't do a 3x3 because then you can't get the fuel into it anymore. And one thing I forgot to mention, but it's very important, you cannot put the plasma in pipes. Okay? If you try and put the plasma in pipes, the whole thing just shuts down. The only way that you can move plasma around is via these fusion generators. They're the only things that can input and output plasma. Now, potentially you could use a fusion reactor just to send this stuff around. Like, you could just have a dummy fusion reactor sitting over here sending the plasma across. I assume that would work. I'm not sure if, I mean, considering how much quantum processors these cost, I'm not sure if it's a smart idea to use fusion reactors as pipes, but technically I think you probably could do it. But I think that the intended way is just to make interesting shapes with all of these fusion generators. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we will zoom out and we will look at beauty. That is 24 gigawatts of power. And it's so nice and small. I mean, for 24 gigawatts, it's so nice and small. And it uses, I mean, for 24 gigawatts, it's using one of these every 2 seconds for the entire base. Now, we're only doing 10. We're only doing 10 gigawatts, so it's only using one of these every 4 seconds. So I'm guessing there's going to be a rush of these at some point. But anyway, that's pretty much it. That's how you do fusion power. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.